Hello, people. I'm Lee Cole 3 with my partner here, James Proctor. And we have Francis Fiordilino. Did I say that right?
This is Francesco. You could call me Francesco, but you could call me Frank. That's
Okay, we'll
fine.
call him Frank. And Frank,
Francis.
a lot, a lot of people are going to be surprised you're here because you and I,
I think a lot of people are surprised I'm here too. Believe me, I'm gonna get the calls.
One thing I know is you're very knowledgeable, one of the more knowledgeable people out here. And the only way this show is going to get better by having more knowledgeable people on it. And
Depends what you know. Sometimes too much is not good.
well, I heard you speak. I heard you speak, and I listened to some of your interviews.
Right.
And you have a quite amazing life. And I'm going to let James start off. He wants to ask you a few questions, and then we'll just go and pick it up from there. James, all yours.
All right. So thank you, everyone. And so if you haven't, please like this video and subscribe if you hadn't. We're going to continue to bring good content, have great interviews like this one. And so, Frank, thank you for coming on with us. It means a lot to us.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, let's start at the beginning of your life. I'm very fascinated because obviously your family goes way back. In the mafia, but also going back to Sicily. And so could you tell us a little bit about your family, where you're from or your family's from in Sicily, and kind of when did your family make the move to the United States?
Well, I said this before. My family came to the United States, not so much for, not mob related at all.
Right.
It was trying times. It was the 60s and the late 60s actually, and the economy was starting to dip again towards the worst, and it was the move. She had relatives. My mom had a brother here, and we decided as a family, not maybe because I was too young, I had no choice, by 1972 to hit the road, and that's what we did. And via Bushwick, we ended up all in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And you had two uncles that actually was with Joe Bonanno's family, isn't that right? Giovanni and Anthony.
No, Anthony was my dad. No, Giovanni was my dad's brother, and he was here before. I think he came into this country in the late 50s, early 60s, and he was around one of the warring factions of the Bonanno War in the 60s. He was an anti-Bonanno guy, matter of fact. He was on the other side.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit. So you were in Bushwick, right? That's where you grew up, in Bushwick?
Bushwick, Brooklyn. Yeah, that's on are you familiar with the area?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. So definitely a lot of Italian and Sicilians that were there. And so you got this mix, right, of gangsters and legitimate people. And so how was it like growing up in Bushwick? And, how did the gangsters and then the legitimate people interact in the neighborhoods? And when would they need to interact?
Well, it was primarily Sicilian, first of all. There was Italian, but not
right.
Italians, Southern Italians at that, and they were many. There was a couple of second generation, third generation Italians, but they were also the minority. But by then, they moved out of the neighborhoods, either moved up to Queens or up to Long Island. They were getting out of there. How was it? It was very congested. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. We lived in a 6-unit building on Hemrod Street in Bushwick,
mm-hmm.
and but we didn't know the difference. For me, it was magical. Looking back, it was just a great time,
Right.
And Lee probably knows city life around that time. You had the kids were playing Johnny the Pony at night, the ice cream trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And you were in the greatest decade. You were there in the 70s and 80s at Brooklyn.
It was great. The kids used to play stickball. I used to sit on the cars and watch them. But then the neighborhood started deteriorating.
Right.
A lot of the businesses, some of the businesses stayed, and a lot of them just closed up. The blackouts of '77, if you remember that was close to home. The looting and what came out.
I was walking in Times Square when that happened.
You remember that was August, I believe, of '77.
Yeah, and
And
that's when
that's
you had the
around the same
Summer
time
of
Elvis
Sam
died.
as
I
well,
remember that.
right? That's the Summer of
I'm
Sam
sorry.
as well. Summer of Sam as well,
Yes,
right?
exactly. I think by '78 he was caught. I watched that movie, the one with Spike Lee, which I think is a accurate portrayal
Mm-hmm.
of that era. You did a really good job. I know Italians hate that movie, but at the same time, it's pretty close to the truth. And I remember playing that Son of Sam tag. Oh, he's coming, whatever. And we all used to run. I was 7, 8, you know.
And you remember when we're on the subways back then, and you're standing on the subways, people act. This guy had everybody thinking. Everybody, one man had everybody thinking. It's amazing. You know.
And I remember Reggie Jackson. I'm a Met fan. I don't know how I became a Met fan. I guess when I moved to Queens.
Mm-hmm.
But
what I want to ask you is, you're a young guy growing up in that area. Did you find yourself attracted to the guys with the big cars, the guys that the kids in the neighborhood looked up to?
Not at that point. Not in Bushwick, because at my uncle used to come to the house, and he used to wear a suit and tie every day. He used to come see his sister's mother. He used to come up there, and he was probably grand to me. He was bigger than life. He looked like at a young age, whatever he was doing it right. When the few times we went to his house in Middle Village, he had a one family home. You know, he was just, you could tell he was doing better than my father and my mother were. And so that made him, you know how kids think.
Yeah.
You know, my cousins had the better toys than I did or whatever. So that was that. But then, you know, you start incorporating questions and things happen. As you get older, you know who not to associate with and who to associate with. You know, I learned at a young age that the cops were not our friends. They weren't necessarily the bad guys, but you know, I caught a couple of kicks in the ass for waving at a cop car. You know, so people probably say, "Well, we should have known back then."
Yeah,
but
cops were a lot different back then. They are.
Yeah,
they'd kick your ass back then. I mean, that was one of my first pinches, an assault on a cop, and they fucked my ass up. And I didn't even hit the guy. He just didn't like the way I approached him. You understand? He called it. He said I was resisting arrest, and that locks me up in a cage. And he was a kid. It was the Bonanno family. Now he got locked up. He jumped in for no fucking reason. The next thing you know, the guy's going, you know, you broke my trigger finger. So I looked at him. I said, well, you ain't never gonna use it anyway. You know. And he got more pissed.
So you started getting involved really early on, kind of in the life per se, was when you were 13, right? You started working in some of your family's coffee shops and businesses. And can you tell us a little bit about that part of your life as a teenager?
My eyes were opened up around that time, because whatever I needed as a kid, the simple stuff, quarters to go play video games or whatever, I could go to these places and you could see these guys were all about whatever I wanted. They made it easy. You know, you want to roll quarters, here you go, boom, damn. So I'm all about that, you know. And little by little, you inquire, well, what does he do? Well, and now and then, a friend of yours, his dad, goes to prison, and then you start learning. They had the nice cars, they had the girls, and then that's what you want. But I think my eyes started opening when I started working in these coffee shops. You know, like I said, I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago. I said, I don't know where I started, where I went back. You know, I was doing okay in school. I wasn't the best student. I was playing sports, whatever. And the kid looked at me and said, it's when you started working at the coffee shop. That's what happened.
And see, explain to people what these coffee shops were, because people think we're talking about regular coffee shops.
No, you're not going in there. Basically, they're open for their front is they open for the public just to make it look like they're a legitimate business. But then you have the members only or private staff only in the back, and they play cards. There's the slot machines / joker pokers in the back, card games going on all that. And two, it's a meeting place for guys to scheme all fucking day. That's what we used to do. You know, at 13, I was making $120 a day. You know, that's a lot of money back then.
Exactly.
On a bad day. On a good day, I was 300, whatever.
Wow.
And I would make that 3, 4, 5 days a week. Go to school, but half of the time I fell asleep in class because I was out doing whatever I had to do. and I was really flunking out. And right, it was double-edged sword, if you will, So that was going on, and then we would scheme as we got older. That's we wanted to do what the big guys were doing, and little by little, we became those guys.
So you actually did a bunch of you guys, the younger guys, come together and form a group and go wreck havoc?
I don't think we formed it. I think like on a shit. I say it all the time. Jerry Capisi made it more than it was. It was a coffee shop where we hung out, where we formed, and some cliques were closer than others, and they put all these crimes together, and at the end of the day, they form the Giannini crew, and that's what it was. The ones that I talked about a different clique, Matter of fact, I'm starting to work on a book I've been working on for a long time, and people automatically think that that's the area I'm gonna be touching that much, but actually it ain't. It's about more of an Angela's ashes of an Italian experience, and coming to the United States and what becomes, and the transformation of a lot of these Sicilian people, such as myself.
Right.
The good ones, and it's a coming of age. It's all that put together. And it's not so much about the Giannini crew. I mean,
right.
Yeah, of course, there's a couple of kids I've met, but that's it.
Who was the Giannini crew named after? Was it a certain person?
It was a cafe that we hung out in.
It was basically off their cafe, huh?
Yeah, that's all.
Wow.
Yeah, and we did hang out there. We all knew each other.
Yeah, Capisi would make it sound like it was named out, after some guy running in the
right.
street.
That we sat down and not we, whoever was there that day, and thought about scheming, and we're gonna do this and that. I mean, it got so bad that there was a episode of America's Most Wanted because one of the individuals was on the lam, and they actually have these kids. They're kids at this point. They're 23, 25. They have them raising wine glasses and talking about the next scheme they're gonna do. Man, that was furthest from the truth. Okay, they had a ball with that, and we were just basically we were just kids growing up wanting to do big things,
Yeah. What about your uncle? So Frank Navarro, right? And so I know you've spoken about him, and so it sounds like that you had. You obviously loved him. You had a relationship that I guess at times it wasn't always the best, but it was pretty good. So what did you learn from him, and what can you say about your uncle? Cheat.
Well, to his defense, he never wanted anything from anybody. What was his, and what was that? But he's also wasn't the ones to put us in a path in that life. I had an older brother that he was really close to, in a sense. Well, two of my older brothers were really close. Were close to him. I'm the youngest by 8 years, so not so much. And he had them doing a lot of things back then. Running places, running businesses, and all. And then at the end of the day, he passed them over to his kids, who he made at 25 and 26. So. And I had a brother who lost his life on. I'll get into that some other time.
I understand.
But our accolades from him were not respected, and otherwise, guys seen it at the time. They were like, "What the fuck?" You
couldn't make any money either, right? You weren't really able to make money.
I was definitely not a money guy, but I also was. I was also on a mob high, if you will. And when you get reminded so many times that you're only going to end up two places in life, what the hell you got to look? I had more of an urban look at things that you would. I'm going to say it like let's say as at one point of an African American gangster than one that was an attack. My view, not the people I was around.
Right. No, I understand.
Every day was like, what's next? Didn't matter, and I kind of loved the life at the time. And I always say I like jail better, and I think because I got recognized in jail,
Right.
Who were some of the guys that used to come into these? well-known gangsters that you can mention that people would know that used to come into these coffee shops?
Well, technically, the Ridgewood area gangsters at the time, and Middle Village, the Queens, and Brooklyn. You name them. I don't know who was it. Bobby Glasses, Baldo, Baldo Amato. That is, Patsy Conti.
So you're talking some pretty big guys there.
Yeah, they've been around me all my life, one way or another. Not always there. We knew each other by name. Not Patsy, but Baldo or Bobby very well. There was Dominic Cefalù, who I was really close to it also.
And how did you feel about Baldo Amato?
I respected him. He was kind of like, when somebody's from your town and he's making a lot of headway in your profession, you kind of like root for him. You root for him to be the best he could possibly be. I think he was stagnated in his position in the mob just because Joe Massino was feared of him. And it's unfortunate that he didn't get out. And when he did 5 years and he came out in 89 or 90 and just was loyal to the same people who buried him,
And he's currently in prison now.
I said it too. My testimony was over me working for him at a coffee shop and doing bets. So I did testify. I didn't want to testify. My family's go back 100 years. If it was for my testimony, he would have probably got indicted. Sal Montagna buried him. A couple of other kids that I grew up with buried him. I didn't bury.
Right. Who was your mentor?
And I do feel bad for him.
Who was your mentor growing up? So, I mean, not growing up, but in that life. So, for example, we always hear of Sammy the Bull. He mentions Toto. Toto, it was kind of his mentor in that life.
I would say, definitely, I've said this before, Vito Grimaldi was definitely, if I would have listened to him, if he would have came earlier in my life, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is
been different. Yeah. Well,
he took a wild kid from the streets and started to figured he could work with me. He could see what's up. How can we make this kid a little bit more? He's not that bad. He's got half a brain, He gave me that. My uncle never gave me that much. And
Vito Grimaldi, just so people know, Vito Grimaldi had the bread company, Grimaldi's. His nickname was the Baker, if I'm correct.
That's right.
And
that's
so
right.
That's
right. You were saying you like this Kaiser roll.
The best.
I'm sorry, Lee.
The best bread, the best Kaiser rolls is Grimaldi's.
In the city, it's a staple.
I don't know if they still make it with the same recipe. I hope they do. But it was just absolutely, you can't find that anywhere in the country. So
it's definitely a New York staple there. Kaiser rolls always been probably one of the best sellers too. I would imagine, but it was 20 years ago anyway, 25 years ago. But they probably don't give a fuck about my plug, but it is what it is.
Hey, no problem. But
he was definitely that guy. Very smart, very sharp. Came off. Wasn't. He was definitely quiet, but he was also the elephant in the room. Not physically, but when he ever came to a room, you kind of reminded me a lot of that character in the Goodfellas, the Paulie Vario character.
Right. Yeah.
In the way he moved and the way he talked all the time. He was a good guy.
He was very well respected, I take it.
I'm sorry?
He was very well respected, I take it.
He was, definitely. Not only in a mob life, but just in general. People died. One of his workers died, and he had many workers. Didn't matter who they were. He'd show up to the funeral. He really, really respected the fact that people worked for him, and he showed it.
Right. Yeah. Very well. There's a little. Might as well get this little thing in there because when he was buried at a funeral, some crap broke out. A couple of factions started fighting in there.
Yeah, that's what I hear. It's unfortunate. I mean, out of anybody, this was a guy that would have been anybody else's funeral would have been totally against what happened. Like that would have been disrespectful and was was old school, as more old school you could get. And this happened. This was just, yeah, it's sad.
It was
It's
all
sad.
over. And what I found really sad about it, the guy that's running the family basically gave orders to people not to go to this guy's funeral. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy was like, where the hell do you get the right to tell someone who to go to, whose funeral to go to, first of all? And the guy that ignored him was a pretty big guy, guy himself. And he just ignored him, went to the funeral. So you got to give your kudos to him. That's how I look at it.
I mean, the process, the discretion. Yeah, of course. That's his son-in-law, Joe.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course. I mean, that's just unheard of. I mean, even if the guy was shot, I don't know the story behind it. You know.
Yeah.
You could ask that guy over there in Detroit. He know better. But
Okay.
yeah. But just that happened. Look, if that would have happened to Carmine Galante's funeral, you'd expect it. But not such a good guy like that. He was for you know, he used to say, hands are the last thing you want to use, you know. That's just you don't do that, because that could, and not only that, you got to watch out who you raise your hands to sometimes, you know what I mean?
Right.
And well, that's what I love about having you here, because there's a few things that I've done. I did quite a few. I did one on Joe Waverly too. And then you just told me, and I didn't realize this, that you were related to Dino Calabro.
Yeah, his mom is my first cousin. That's not a good picture of me. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I know. I don't want him to come after me for putting that picture up.
Nah, he's one of these guys that he even surprised me with the record he put up. I was like, Jesus Christ.
See, he was involved in two very big mob hits. And one of them was of Ralph Dawes, the cop. And this guy was going out with the ex-wife of Joe Waverly. So Joe Waverly ordered him murdered. And so, you know,
right. That was the story behind it. I don't know. It's like anybody else. It's what I read.
And Joe Waverly was found innocent, just so people know.
Okay. Yeah. So exactly. So we got to watch what we say, but at the same time, the ex-wife, Joe Waverly's ex-wife, was this guy's present wife that got killed, and it all came out when these guys started flipping about their theory on the story, and there was indictments over it.
And then it also came out that Dino was involved in the murder of Wild Bill.
Wild Bill, God rest his soul, Wild Bill. Yeah, I'm friends with his son, and you know that's always been a touchy subject, but that's a life. You know, that's a life. Those guys were they were up there a lot bigger than I was, and that's just part of the game, and that's what happens, unfortunately.
How many guys? How many guys did you lose where you wake up one morning and someone's killed, and you're like, "Holy cow!" You know, I was just with them yesterday. I mean, people don't realize that guys in the street, that happens to them all the time. How did you deal with guys like that?
Well, you know what it is? You see it in the movies. In the 2-hour movie, you see 10 people get killed. In your lifetime, you probably see 10 people get killed, and it always stays in back of your head where you were, where'd you heard that, you know, and who said it, and it's like, yeah, you know, it's like you said, you were there with them one day, and it goes like that for the people that get locked up the next day too. I had dinner with a lot of kids, or we went to go shoot pool, and the next day there's like 30 cars in front of the house, and we don't see them for 20 years. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
That's the other side of it. That's a good thing. At least you have a hope when you get locked up, you know. But when you're dead, you're dead. That's it. So.
Okay, James, I've been kind of putting you out of here.
No, you're good. You're in good. So yeah, we've kind of talked about, you know, your uncle. We talked about your mentor, and so who were your best? Who would you consider your best friends while in that life? You know, as an associate of the Bonanno crime family. Who were your?
I had a lot of good friends that I liked, that I still miss, but. You know, it's unfortunate where we are. We're no longer friends because of it.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
A couple of them are in the life today, so I don't want to mention them.
Don't mention that. Yeah.
But I do miss them if they're listening. You know, and I know like a couple of them are surprised or whatever, but I can't take it back. So that's where I'm at.
I heard something you said one day. You said that you would love to pick up your phone and call some of these people, but you know you can't. And the way you said it, I heard that. I had the feeling it just really bothers the hell out of you.
Yeah, because a lot of these guys too, I didn't tell them, but they lived through the code that even though you didn't tell on me, you told on somebody else. Therefore, we're done. You know what I mean? I was one of the last guys to get picked up out of the group of my friends. And I thought I actually skated for a while until they just threw me in a bigger indictment. I said, well, I made the big time. I didn't make the fucking Giannini crew thing. They threw me right in the fucking Bonanno. And the next thing I know, a few months later, I got Joe Massino as my co-defendant. So that was like, wow, that was the fuck. You know?
And everything came falling down when Frank Coppa, he was the first Bonanno to come out and really...
Yes.
And when he did that, and just to give you, Frank Coppa was a man that knew how to make money and stuff, but he wasn't really a street guy, from what I understand. He was more of a racketeer. He had a lot of businesses, more of a money guy. Is that correct when you say that?
Yeah, he was definitely a money guy, but what way I understand, he also would crack a head if he had to, just not as much as the other guys did. And sometimes when guys start making a lot of money, other people like their bosses or their captains or whatever don't want him to get involved in that, because if they go to jail, they don't see that money no more. So he's more valuable just like sitting in the corner minding his business than being you know, that's why idiots like me were out there for, because to protect these guys with money, you know.
Well, if you look at this picture right here, it looks like they're living the life, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, forget about it. They're eating well.
Yeah,
that's Joe.
They're not coming out of the gym.
Yeah. Well, see, Frank Coppa was loved by Joe Massino. Frank Coppa used to take him on vacations.
Well, I got a Frank Coppa story. So he comes from Fort Dix. They take him out of Fort Dix and they bring him down to they already people like he's going and then he'd come back. Where the fuck did he go? He didn't go to on a visit or something. So already it was starting. They believing he was starting to talk. Right. Anyhow, we go for a status meeting in court, and he's my co-defendant, and he comes back on a stock market case if I'm correct. He's looking at 5 years. Right. So who would think this guy's gonna talk? He's only looking at 5 years. Why would he talk? Why would he bring a whole fucking family down over 5 years?
Well, they hit him with a second indictment.
Well, that's the second indictment. He was already inside. The second indictment was in October of 2000 and I'm sorry, no, 2002. October 2002, he gets indicted. He comes into the MDC. We're all down there. He's there. He's only looking at 5 years. Yes, he's almost done with the other sentence of 4 or 5 years, and he's looking at another 5. He doesn't want to do it. He's a big man. And I had this discussion with Frank Lino after about him because they were really close. Why would you think he flipped? He was a big man. Jail. He was very uncomfortable in jail. The first bit he was doing and getting around. You know, when you're a big guy, it's uncomfortable being in jail. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what had to be doing. You know, he was asking me, "Hey, what's going on?" He's asking me a couple of questions, and I couldn't. We were talking just like anybody else would talk because there was like 20 of us in there, maybe 15. TG was there, Hector Pagan was there, and I'm like, he was cool as a cucumber. And I remember talking to Joe about that. He was really cool and collective. He goes, yeah, because he knew he was gonna fucking talk. I said, oh, all right, and I guess. But he brought a murder so he brought in guys on a murder.
And just so people know, it was on it's the Sonny Black murder.
That's correct.
Yes.
But he brought him down on a murder, just not to do the 5 years, and that's crazy, you know. And from there, just the domino effect. Canarella after him, Joe D'Amico after that. There was guys that weren't even getting arrested. They were knocking the DA's office that we later found out about. There was this one guy, Pete Rosa, like Pete Rose, but Rosa. They just kept on coming, and then Sal Vitale just blew
Sal
the doors.
Vitale was probably the best.
Yeah, he was. Well, you got to remember, he has 11 murders. Okay, he has 11 murders, and most of the murders he was involved in are between 4 and 8 people involved.
Yeah.
So do the math. You know, he brought in a whole lot of people.
Yeah, and he was related to Joe Massino, right?
He's his brother-in-law. Joe Massino's wife is Sal's sister.
And
yeah,
so,
and I never understood why he could even get into that life, because we find out later that he actually spent time as a correctional officer. You know?
Yeah, but nobody knew that at the time. He was good at what he did. You know, he was a good gangster. A matter of fact, while Joe was in jail, he took care of business. Just that, and I seen him. He's another one I seen in jail. And the minute he went to that, he seen the lights out. He looked like a ghost. I knew when when you know somebody's gonna flip, you could tell. I knew that guy was gonna flip. He didn't want to be there. And the dialogue between him and his brother, that's 3-4 hours they were together, you could see it was a bit cold.
Now you made the statement Joe Massino was like, talking about rats and all that stuff. How shocked were you when Joe Massino flipped?
Very, very, very shocked. I definitely seen a change in his character while we were in jail together. We used to go to co-defendant meetings all the time. On Monday we would spend at least 6 hours together. Not only me, him, with Willie, Robert Lino, Danny Mangelli, and he looked like somebody who was PTSD'd out as the process went. And when his brother flipped, that's when he really didn't seem like himself. You know what I mean?
And so you were just told. Most people probably were shocked when he flipped.
I was shocked. Definitely shocked. I mean, you got to remember this guy. This guy was God to me. At one time you talk about the God upstairs. That was mine. That was a lot of people. He was the savior of this thing that goes back to my family hundreds of years. And
he did
even
a lot
though
of
he wasn't
stuff for the
Sicilian,
family. Yeah.
Even though he wasn't Sicilian, he might as well have been.
Yeah.
And in the 90s, it seemed like he was the top guy. After Gigante got locked up.
Yeah.
Now,
one of the people that was involved in, also, and it seemed like was involved in several of the big hits was Santo Giordano. You know him, and
yeah, that's a relative of mine as well. He's a relative. He's a double cousin, actually.
Yes.
You want to talk
about him, because he was involved in, he had in a couple of big hits, but also he had a lot of tragedy as well. And I didn't know how much you felt comfortable talking about him, but I think he's a fascinating story, honestly.
He is. I'll keep it brief. He was shot. There was 4 people that got shot that day, and the 3 captains hit. He was one of them, accidentally. Later on, I remember talking to Nicky Santora, who accidentally did shoot him, and was that friend of mine as well. That's what happened. He got shot, and he got paralyzed from it.
Where did he get shot?
In the back.
Oh, wow. So it was a serious wound.
Yeah, he was paralyzed.
He was paralyzed from it. Yeah.
Wow.
And he back to him though. Aside from his criminal past, he was a very intelligent guy. He put his plane together, a couple planes together. I know it's probably the one that crashed as well, but that's how smart he was. He had presidential qualities. I've said that before. Really intelligent guy. Kind of had, like I said this also. He had like the Michael Corleone tragedy happen to him. He got punched in the eye one day. He took it bad, and he came from a family of wise guys. My grandmother's a Giordano, and my uncle Michael John married his sister. And that I know it's believes like, what the hell's going on? That's common. That's a common thing.
Yeah. He'll be back.
I
think I think it's the internet connection, but yeah, let's continue to talk about him.
Sure. So after that, he he started hanging out with his crew of friends, and that was it. Then I think it was '84.
Right.
He got in his plane, and my Uncle John was actually with him that day.
Right.
They went on their first round. My Uncle John felt sick flying, so let me come down, and then he went back up, and boom, he went down, and that was it. But it's a tragic story.
Yes.
And one that it's even hard to talk about even for myself.
Yeah, I'm sorry about
no,
that.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It's because he was a good. I got great stories about him. I remember I was like 9 or 10, and I think the what was it? The USA Today's were coming. Remember them? The newspaper.
Yes, exactly.
And they had the newspaper thing where you could grab like 50 newspapers at the same time.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I would grab them and then would sell them for $0.25 each. And he talked. He had his Eldorado. He goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm selling newspapers." And he just got a kick out of it. He thought it was the funniest thing. He knew that I stole them and then I was making $0.25 on each one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. But just the look on his face, I still remember it there.
Wow. Do you know what happened to the plane? Do we have any speculation on
no, to this day it was some kind of mechanical misfunction or whatever. He wasn't driving as pilot. He had a pilot at that point. He wasn't the one piloting the plane. But yeah, it was a tragic story.
Right. No, I mean that makes sense. And the other thing is that when you were involved with that life, you started again when you were 13, and then and you continue till 2002, right?
Yeah, that's when I got locked up.
Yeah.
And that was it. Lights out. It was. And I like I said, this is another thing. Probably like you said a million times. I flipped about 7 days before trial, and that was where I was at.
Yeah. No, I mean that makes sense. So yeah, I mean I'm glad you're back, Lee. We were just talking about Santo Giordano, and so we just finished that discussion. And so, Lee, did you have some other questions?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you some people, and you can tell me how you know them. I did a story once on Cookie Durso. How do you say his last name? Durso.
Durso. The apostrophe Urso.
Now, how are you? How do you know that Cookie?
Well, he was more of Vito Guzzo's friend than mine. He used to come around the neighborhood now and then. Always see him at the clubs. And after Mike got shot in his own neighborhood during a card game, they were pressing. The story behind that is they were pressing on these guys a lot, and they invited him to play cards. It was a loan shark debt that kept on getting. It was predatory at one stage, and then they just shot him and a cousin of his, Tino.
And they shot him behind the ear, and his cousin
died. Yeah. But the joke behind, and it's a pretty fucked up joke, but Vito's also gotten shot 2 times. And I remember they came into the coffee shop one time together, and a friend of my kids around, he goes, "I bet they can't get into an airport through an airport metal detector test," the thing. But it's actually funny.
We talk about informants and stuff, and I got kind of some slack and some pushback because I said what happened to Cookie Durso and why he flipped is he basically wanted to kill the guy that shot him behind the ear, and the Genovese boss at that time was very weak, and he told him no because this guy owed money, and so he started planning the hit anyway, and it got
and he was using other people from my neighborhood to do it, to make that, to want to make that pass, but at the time, bad timing, and while he was doing that, he was trying to show his oats again. He gets involved in that Johnny Borelli hit.
Yeah,
I think that was Gene's cousin. I know it's John's. Gene has told me that's his cousin. And they get involved. There's 6 guys involved, 7 guys involved, and he ends up flipping him and another kid I grew up with. And that's what happened. They had the weight of the murder on him, and that was it. He wore a watch actually. And that was the end. He brought in a lot of guys too. He brought in like close to 50, 60 guys.
Do you think that they push him into that position?
To no,
to flip, or
no.
did he?
Did he worry about his life because he wanted to kill?
I don't think so. I don't think so. He was planning a murder after that, and he was involved in a murder after that. And he had a cousin involved in that murder also that he brought into that murder. That he ended up telling on this kid Felix. He ended up getting 14 years. So
there's more behind the Cookie Durso story than is pretty much put out there.
I mean, it makes good TV if that's what you want. Right. Yeah, they shot me, so I told on them and worldwide. Yeah, okay, but why are you involved in the murder then?
Great point there. I did a story.
I he never was really a friend. He was an acquaintance. I have friends. Well, they're acquaintances too because I haven't seen them since back in the day when I was back in Ridgewood, but they're friends with him now, so I really don't want to stir the pot. But yeah, I mean, if you really want to come down to it, it wasn't like, yeah, they shot me, now I'm going to get him back for shooting me. It was like, no, I'm going to commit murders, and one day if I get the okay, I'm going to go shoot them back.
Okay, so Santo Giordano, he was the driver, wasn't he the driver at the Galante head?
They took a print. His print was on the steering wheel, I believe.
Right.
That's how they determined he was the driver. In that, but it's not far fetched. He was definitely around. Those were his guys, and he was a little bit more higher up than people thought at the time. He was one of the guys that was the leaders in that whole that quote unquote Zip faction.
Right.
People always put Sal Catalano there, but some people also tell you that he was supposed to be having that spot if that accident don't happen in '81.
Yeah.
And it made sense because he talked English and he could relate to everybody else.
I'm going to put up a Cesar Benaventre. Is that how you say his last name?
Bonaventre, yeah. Bonaventre, close.
Yeah.
Now, he was a fascinating guy because, well, he was big into drugs for one, but he
was a very ballsy guy. He was Carmine Galante's bodyguard. He was known to be the tall guy.
Yes, and he set him up. And when they
in Sicilian, they got that from the Sicilian, what they call lungo, which means the tall one, the long one. And his other guy used to be the good-looking one, Baldo. That's what they called him. That was their nickname in Italian,
right.
Sicilian. So then they they made it they Americanized it in the papers.
Now,
very Caesar comes from a long line of he came from a long line of mobsters going back home. The Baventries were known in my town. They were one of the leading factions of the gangsters to come out of my town. They ran it for a long time, and very close to my family too. They were. I don't know how they are now, but and then the other ones are the Buccellatos, James families.
But you're related to Bonaventre?
I'm not. I have family. Yeah. I have family that's married into that. Okay. To that family. Like I have a cousin that's married to Jack Bonaventre's aunt.
Oh, okay. I see how it goes.
But you got to remember, there's only 14,000 people in my town. And at one point, if you weren't corrupt, you were married to corruption. So one way or the other. So it was just, it was, and especially after World War II. If you were anything but gangster, you didn't belong there. We hated the fascists and we hated the commies.
I heard you say in an interview, and if you you can explain this to me because I thought it was interesting, but I didn't hear the part. But you said that Caesar's death, the more you heard about it, the more it really bothered you.
Yeah, it did. It did. I kind of, as I got older and understood what was going on. See, but my uncle Cheech, who was also a Castelmarise, was born, but he was also a money guy. He put everything in front of everything. That was his thing. And he was a Joe Massino guy as well. He wasn't like, when there's a war in a family, what people don't understand in the mob is they think that they go all out, one faction against another. No, it's like 15 to 20 people go at it, and the rest watch, and they sit back. See. And they're like, hey, you want to get involved? No, just tell us after who I got to give money to.
Oh, gosh.
And that's how it works. People think it's this all-out war. And that's how usually it goes.
Why is
and
it
my
the
uncle was
case
that
like
type of
that?
guy.
Okay.
Why was it like that for? Why was it just because they need to continue to make money on the street? Because the
No,
way I've
people want
heard,
the top position. It's money. It's greed. That's all
oh,
that
I
is.
see what you're saying. They want to stay neutral because that way they don't want to tip their hand and
Oh,
then
the mutual guys are like they're making money what they're doing. They're content with the little they got.
yeah,
If
yeah,
it's little, they don't want everything, and they don't want the problems that come with everything. So they just like you
right,
guys figure it out. Just knock on a door when you when you tell us what's going on.
right.
You know, and
No, that
that's
makes
how
sense.
and that's how mostly these mob wars are.
Hmm.
Some people step down, some people give their positions away. It's the nature of the beast.
Now,
Hmm.
getting back to Caesar, I hear that he got shot in the head. They couldn't kill him right away, for one.
Yeah, he grabbed that came out in the 302s, Sal Vitale's. He
Hmm.
shot him, and while he shot him, he grabbed onto the steering wheel or something, or he grabbed Sal, and they had a
Hmm.
tussle, and they had to stab him. Bobby, not Bobby, but Louis had to come out and stab him like 3-4 times. Those came out. Nobody ever told me that. Nobody ever. Those 302s were floating. I was in that case, and
Hmm.
that's how I heard about it. But I think the thing that got me pissed off with Joe, little by little, about Caesar's death was the one time we're all together, and he's like looking at me with one eye, like out like this, and he said, "Well, the whole thing with Baldo was I had nothing to do with that. Because they had said if Baldo comes with Caesar that day, we're gonna kill Baldo too."
Mm.
And you gotta remember these people like my family. Yeah, you can
Yeah,
say whatever the
of
fuck you want.
course.
It starts resonating. I could be nodding, yeah, okay, whatever.
So Joe Massino was talking about people in your family basically getting knocked off.
Well, like family, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I knew Baldo since I was 2 years old, 3 years old. I know all those guys, but whatever. And back to that, he's like, and I told Rusty, he shows up every time I call him, Rusty Rastelli. So we got to give him a pass. That was his way of saying, because we all know at that point of the game, Joe was calling a lot of shots. He was making his move.
Rastelli was
the one time,
wasn't he?
yeah, the one time he gets to Caesar Baventry, he's making his move. He said that you can't look back after that. Okay. So he was the one who actually said, if Barlow comes, it wasn't Rusty. You pushed that envelope. You pushed that. You did the Sonny Black thing. You did everything else. Your power move was being set that day because that was one you can't go back. I mean, if you fuck up that hit, you got problems.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think
then the pizza connection comes, and they all get arrested? So that's a victory for him,
Mm.
So he wasn't any part of that. That was the Sicilian faction, basically.
Yeah, he wasn't part of that.
Right.
Did you know the? Oh no, go ahead.
That's
Lee,
okay.
And he wasn't part of the Galante hit too. So back to that.
Yeah.
He was. I'm pretty sure that Massino was an active captain during that time, so he couldn't possibly go to these guys and say, "Hey, who was involved or what did do?" That's a no-no. When a regular guy goes
so
up
you
to
don't
somebody
believe that he actually went to the commission to get permission?
I think he did through.
You
I
think he did? Okay.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, no, I do. Through Rastelli, of course. But do I think that he knew how it was going to go down, who was involved in that? No. You tell one person this is what we need to do, and then it's that person to take care of who he's got to get, what he's got to do, and it dies there. You don't go back and say because it's a murder, it's a triple homicide at that. And Joe wasn't a boss at that time. He was a acting captain, possibly a captain. I'm not sure. Yeah. But when something like that goes down, you don't ask questions. And when it's over, you definitely don't ask questions about a homicide unless you're a boss. If a boss comes up to you and goes, what happened in that homicide? You better. If Joe Massino came up, and every time he asked me anything as simple as, what did I eat last night? Or anything, I told him.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to bring up. That's a good segue into something. So there's been criticism of Vinny Gorgeous. I know he kind of was. You didn't deal with Vinny Gorgeous. Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that short because I know what it is getting. I'm usually and yeah, I know what it's getting. Look, I could speak as for myself because I've had Joe ask me stuff.
Yeah. So he would ask you about stuff that Ed, you were required to.
I answered him. Because if I was evasive, I didn't want to answer or anything. And the next day, you know, I could have got killed over that.
So in prison, it wouldn't have been uncalled for Vinny Gorgeous to be asked about a piece of work then, right? And that he.
Well, that's what I'm trying. I know where you're getting at. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Let me rephrase this. Okay. Yeah. Here's what we're saying. And you don't have to go any further. We're saying Dominic Cicali did a show.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm ahead of you guys. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Dominic. Right. Dominic's the captain. Right. I wasn't.
Right.
So I don't know how he sees things. I do know what I know about Cosa Nostrum. You could say because he was a captain. You know, I don't know. But I don't want to beat around the bush. If a boss asks you a question, ask Sammy the Bull this question. Paul Castellano asked him a question. What would he say?
Sammy the Bull just made Tony Pizza a soldier on the street, so I don't want to talk to him.
Yeah. I should just go out and say I knew Tony Pizza. So
everybody should just come out and say.
You could say he tossed me a beating or something, you know.
He was
whatever. If it makes him happy, whatever.
Yeah, but you're saying though.
But you're saying Joe Massino. If you're boss of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I remember him asking me about a certain individual that I knew as a kid, and he asked me about him. I thought the kid was in trouble. He goes, what do you know about this kid? I said, well, I know his dad. You know his dad and all. And I go, I said he's a little bit of a hothead, but he's a nice kid. He's a loyal kid. I knew him. We have the same godparents. He goes, all right. He goes, okay. A friend of mine's asking about him. Later, I found out who it was, and not only that, he was asking, what do you think? Because we're trying to make this kid outside while they were having the whole fucking that whole resurfacing of the Bonanno family, and there was a lawyer that used to come in to our meetings, and he used to relate messages. So now it makes sense why you asked me about him, because then the kid got made, and he did, and that was that. But whatever he wanted to know, I told him. That was it.
Another thing about Joe Massino, did you think Joe Massino was out of control with all the people he was killing? People don't realize he was killing a lot of people, and
he was doing it mostly out of through his brother-in-law.
Through his brother-in-law.
You want to talk about a guy, and that don't matter if you give the order or you're there. To me, do I think Joe Massino could be a killer if he was in a minute, in New York minute?
There was 11 people murdered by Sal.
But he was in jail. He was ordering a lot of this stuff. He actually, one of his first guys he killed, I think, was a guy named Zumo back, one of his first hits. And he did it himself, so I'm a strong believer of you could do one, you could do, if you go back to that life, either that or you just pick up a couple of rosary beads and act weird for the rest of your life. I've seen people get like that. But if you go back to that circle, you could do it. It's unfortunately it's job description. Not every day, but it is.
Yeah.
He if you think about all the murders he was involved in, there's not many. A lot of orders, but not many. Yeah. He was there at the triple homicide, but then after that, Sal just does a lot of damage.
Now, when you watch,
that's not saying he wasn't a tough guy either. Let's not get that. Let's not get that fucked up.
How inaccurate is the movie Donnie Brasco?
It has a lot. It's a good movie for Hollywood's sake, But as far as you read the book is very accurate. For example, Lefty don't get killed. Sonny does.
No, yeah.
That's one of the accurate.
And the way the captains are killed in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, another one is Nicky Santoro don't get killed, and I know the story behind that. Nicky, and he's called a rat in the movie, which fucking infuriated him. And that was because he went to the film set in Greenpoint and told them that you're not filming here. He tried to extort them, right? He was a funny guy. And they said, okay, all right, whatever. Like, we'll see you later. And then through the movie, they made him look like a rat. You believe that shit? He was infuriated. He was,
oh my God.
And Bruno in Ducato, they made him look soft, and he was nothing. He was anything but soft.
No, none of these guys were soft. I mean, they were nice guys. I'll tell you one thing about the Bonanno crew, especially that era, that crew right there. Drinkers, good time, funny ass guys. Yeah, and then we'll kill you. They were happy go lucky. That Greenpoint crew was. And I'm gonna say I had the pleasure in my 90s to hang out with whatever was left of that. Anthony Woodvito and Nicky Santor. There was another guy, Sally Broads. And they were funny as shit. Yeah. We all used to hit the topless bars. They used to make me drive, even though I was drunk as shit. We all would drive.
Yeah.
And with a bunch of 60-year-olds, you know, and I'm like 20, we were having fun.
Well, you were the younger one, right? So
I was the younger one. At that point, I you know, they knew I was a little hot-headed, and they liked that shit. And they could tell me what to do, which makes them feel a lot better.
Right. And did you know and then kind of my final question that I have two, but you know, one before the okay. So
get your money's worth.
Yeah, yeah. Vito Rizzuto, in the Montreal, you know, the Sicilian Mafia in Canada. Did you know Vito, and did you deal with the folks from
No.
Canada?
He used to come down. I knew Giorgio really good. I mean, whenever we had family, you know, either a wedding or an engagement, he would be there. Or anytime we'd see him at the coffee shop. Giorgio more. Vito obviously was up in Canada, but if we did see him, it was a funeral and nothing major. And we knew they were from Canada. They were like the guys from Canada, and there was always this respect. But it was more towards like the Sicilian faction, you know, that you always see them gravitate again with, and that was it, you know.
Were they made though? And that's what I was kind of confused about. Is that actually a faction? So Vito, the Rizzuto crime family, is that a independent family in Canada, or was it a faction within the Bonanno crime family?
It was a faction. It was a crew of the Bonanno family. They answered to New York. They were the Bonanno family. It was the Montreal Bonanno crew of Montreal.
Okay.
And Joe would send them back over there, some guys at times. Frank Lino went up there just to clear the air. He actually went up there and met John Franco in an Expo game when the Mets were up there. And John Franco took a little heat from that, the pitcher. Yeah. So they were.
But is that ended, though? Is that a relationship different now? So I know Vito passed away, so there's still a Rizzuto family. Is that still part of? Maybe you don't even know, but is it part of?
I don't know, but I'm gonna go. I would believe that after the 2012 Thanksgiving hit of Sal Montagna and Many, whatever. I think that's soured. I think it's no longer there.
So
the iron worker.
So the Bonannos killed him. Who killed?
The Canadians killed him.
Oh, they killed. Okay.
Sal the iron worker. Yeah.
And why did they kill him?
I think he was trying to make a move up there. Apparently, this is what I read. I would not know. I don't know. Right. And they weren't ready for that. You know, I knew Sal. I go back with Sal as a kids. And I remember reading that. I was actually in the program. I was in my computer and I looked in and there it was. I was like, wow, what the fuck happened? Shame.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I pretty much want to ask one last question, and then after that, I guess we can. I appreciate the hour you gave us.
No, that's fine.
And there's
I have one question too.
Okay, you ask yeah. How about it?
You ask your question, my man.
Okay, so future of Cosa Nostra. So things have changed. You know, we know that today people aren't routinely killed. You know, we got cameras everywhere, and to me, it seems like that people in the life, or a lot of people in the life, are more afraid of the government than the mafia. So where do you see the mafia going in the next 20 years or so?
I don't know. I don't. Cameras play a big factor. Cameras play a big factor because I think we discussed this prior, and if you think about it, what keeps people honest in the mob? When you break the rules, what happens?
Yeah.
You get killed.
You punish. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a deterrent. You get batted, you get whatever. Now, I went over a friend's house the other day, and he had 18 cameras in his freaking house. You know, we didn't even have 18 cameras in the whole state of New York City in the 70s.
I got 3 cameras here because I'm waiting for Tony Pizza to make a move on me.
Well, you better watch out. First of all, he needs a car.
Yeah.
So you're pretty good for now. Yeah.
Oh, he'll come out here in a bus.
Unless in his car bed.
Yeah.
He sleeps in a car bed. Anyhow, yeah, I mean, so that's a deterrent. These guys now, are they missing balls? No, fuck no. These guys got balls. I know a lot of them that are out there, but they're not stupid either.
Right.
You know, so that's a big. I think that's number one.
Number
2 is you kill somebody. You got to be afraid whoever's killing somebody. If you're involved, he's gonna bring in 10 people with him.
Yeah, and it's not like the old days. If you kill somebody, you throw somebody in the trunk. It's not like that anymore.
No.
I mean, you have a serious investigation going. Back then, they used to ignore a lot of those murders.
Well, you have DNA now that you didn't have back.
You got everything. You got GPSs. These guys could come past your car while you're sleeping and put a GPS on your car. Oh, what the fuck was he doing in Long Island last night? You know what I mean?
Or
all that crap.
Just ping your phone. It's amazing. But
yeah, not a big thing is if he had a GPS on my car, was it legal? And they'll do it. You know they'll do it anyway. And then even though they're not going to go and say they didn't have it, they could work off that case. You know, they don't have to go by the law.
No,
you know how shit works.
Hey, I want to ask you a question.
It's hard to be a criminal these days.
Yes.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. I had no trouble in my 30s and 40s, and when I was in my 50s, I started getting arrested.
Yeah, any way you look at it, at the end of the day, it's difficult.
Very difficult. It's not even worth it no more. It's like, I remember back in the day, there was cash dollar bills everywhere. You go rob a store now, you're going to get like $80 and a bunch of credit card receipts. That's all you're going to get.
But I do feel bad for the bookies and like the gambling halls. I mean, there's casinos in every freaking state, every corner. Little ones, big ones. They have machines in 7-Elevens. How are these guys ever going to make it? That it's hard to be a criminal.
You can watch UFC on TV now, and right underneath it goes call fan fuel and put your bet on the fight minutes before it happens. You know, you just go right online and you make it. And and I think they purposely do that because they want more people addicted to gambling.
No, it's a scam. The government has it packed. They know what they're doing. Like there was a casino I was in Cincinnati this weekend, and it was funny. So if you pass the Ohio River, it's over the bridge, you're in Kentucky, and then you pass on the other side, you're in Cincinnati. So a friend of mine tried to put a bet in the Kentucky side. He couldn't. So he had to walk across the bridge to put a bet. And you know why? Because there's Hard Rock cafes and casinos on that side. So that's part of their deal. So they're doing the same shit that the mobsters used to do. Yeah. You either bet here or you don't bet nowhere. You know, the government.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. And all the vices, most of these vices are legal now. The vices that used to be illegal, they're pretty much legal now. And I'm sure that hurts as well. You know, you got legalized loan sharks, you know, all those payday loans. I mean, everything is.
Oh, yeah. Forget it. Car loans, all that predatory stuff.
Well, I remember in '87, I had a friend from Queens, and I told him I was going to the Tropicana. So he gave me the number of the floor boss down there, the name. And when I went down there, I told the floor boss what I want. He got it for me within a couple of minutes. And people don't realize when you walked in a casino in '86, you'd literally see mobsters in there, and they look like mobsters. The floor boss. Yeah. Now it's just like one big business. Everybody's in a suit. Nobody has any idea. That's the part of growing up in the '80s, because nobody has any idea what that was like when you seen those guys. Or you worked I'll give you an example. In the '70s, my sister worked in the garment district in the furrier industry. You would walk on the street and you would know who was a mobster. And they'd be all over the garment district back then in the '70s and '80s.
Well, I think that was the beginning of the end. In the '80s, like you said, that's what happened with organized crime. They started wanting you to know they were gangsters instead of before that, when they tried to hide the fact. And you know, the flamboyant stuff. That's what kind of was the beginning of the end. You know. And one of my favorite gangsters of all time is John Gotti. I always said that because I was growing up and I kind of like look at this guy. But think about it. He was in your face. He just told you who the fuck he was. He didn't care. So that was pretty good stuff.
See, people talk about him in the chin, but I always look at it this way. John Gotti had a saying about the lion and the lamb. He didn't give a shit if you know who he was. He didn't hide who he was. He was who he was.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And that says, people get mad at me when I say, well, the chin hid who he was. Gotti was like, here I am, Back then, did you say to yourself, were you making so much money and having so much fun you didn't give a shit whether you were arrested and wind up in prison for the rest of your life? I wasn't making no money and I felt that way. I felt like, fuck, it's just a matter of time. I'm doing all this shit. I'm going to get picked up any day or whatever. So live it to the fullest, and so I kind of seen that. But he was good at it. He was the best. He made those power moves. That 85 hit was monumental. I mean, they still talk about it today.
Sure.
And he lived the way he wanted to live, and that's it.
Yeah. And people can say what you want, and it's not like they kept him in prison for most of his life.
They weren't saying that back then, believe me. And even Joe Massino, wherever he's in right now, as God's my witness, he even said that, John took us back 100 years. You know what? To be honest with you, that was his back for a while. Joe Massino, the Gotti crew, they helped him become who he was too. That was his back. It wasn't Sal Vitale alone. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have done nothing.
They lived in the same neighborhood. They lived in the same neighborhood. The family.
They were close. They were close.
Yeah, and that's what you hear. They were close.
Yeah, but that's just typical of how hypocritical that world is. Here's a guy who helped you become who you were, but yet at the same time you tell him he just don't say nothing. Even if you felt that way, don't say.
Right.
But
I'm going to ask you one quick thing before we leave. What do you think?
Sure.
What do you think? Oh, wait! I can't ask you about that. Forget it. He told me before not to mention someone to you on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about other people.
I was just Actually, it was kind of comical. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead, say it. If I don't want to.
What do you think about? It was like what it was. It was like they sat down and they brought Tony down into the basement, plucked his finger, and Sammy Gravano made him right on. He made him.
Oh, you're talking about Tony. We can talk about him. I like that stuff.
How comical did you find that he made Sam? All of a sudden, you got Tony.
He's self-made.
Yeah. And then Sammy goes along with it, and I'm like,
I'm telling you, he needs a fucking reality show. That dummy. He says stuff that's raw and bad and whatever, but at the same time, he's a funny bastard.
Oh, nobody can take that from me. He's funny, but he says some evil stuff, but he could say some of the funniest stuff.
But you know what? People don't give a shit what he says because we all know he's mentally ill. I mean, let's be honest. Let's not lie to each other. We're dealing with a guy that's not all there. Who knows if we really got his background, what we come up with,
We have no idea.
No, we have no idea. But we do, but we don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of common.
We do.
Well, Frank, I want to thank you, Frank, for coming on the show tonight. I'm looking forward to putting this out and getting a lot of nasty remarks. And but I don't.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, look, if it makes you feel any better, I usually don't get that many bad reviews.
No, 99% of the people that watch our show know nothing about what's going on around here. Nothing. It's amazing because they're going to go, "Who's Tony Pizza?" That's what they'll say to me. Right, James. We'll get a bunch of remarks.
Yeah.
Who's Tony Pizza?
Hey, he's the boss. He's self-made.
I don't want to tell him because they'll run over.
What does he do? What does he do? Prick his finger and then talk to the other guy. This guy. He has a conversation with himself. Takes himself out to dinner.
I love when Sammy goes, "Yeah, he was a tough guy. He had an incident in prison."
No, that's just Sammy being. I know Sammy. That's Sammy being. People are like he's lying. He's not lying. He's being sarcastic. I know. That's the way Sammy's sarcastic.
Well, it's kind of clever.
I spent 2 years in prison with him. That's what he does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. I know him. Me and him used to do this together, and people supposed to laugh.
Being sarcastic. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, people laugh.
He does another show the other day, I think yesterday, where he comes out and says, No, he was never part of my crew, but he did work with Tony Lee, and he was a tough guy.
Yeah, he just, you know what, too? And he does find Sammy's got this like dry humor. He likes this stupid shit. He could watch a guy like that and make himself laugh silly, you know?
Yeah.
And then stuff that's actually really funny, he'll be like, he'll be looking at it for hours, don't get it.
Well, Frank, you want to hear something funny? One day my phone rang and I picked it up, and it was Sammy Gravano, because I just put up a video on him that pissed him off. And so he goes, I'm going to put my foot up your ass, he says to me. He goes, if you want to be part of Team Sammy, stop putting that stuff up. And he hangs up on me. And he hangs up on me, just like that.
He's a trip, man, let me tell you. And for a small guy, I got the best story. He got into it with this biker in jail. And I was like in a room next, across the hall, and he was in another room. And I hear, who's a bitch? They were going at it for all week. They were about the same size. This guy had like one eye going the other way.
Yeah.
He was. I was telling you. I think he was one of those guys that told on a fucking meth lab.
Yeah.
He looked like he still was on meth. So they just got into it. They were fucking and fucking really get into it. He's grabbing him by the leg, and he's trying to get him off the bed. And who's the bitch? And he has that voice, right? And the door is open. You see the guy come out. They're about the same size, like holding his eye. I go, what happened, Sammy? He goes, this motherfucker didn't make me sleep. I can't take him anymore. And the guy went to the counselor. And he was like, I got hit. The counselor was like, get the fuck out. You bother everybody. Like, just get away from me.
Yeah. If he was out in the street, he would have got hit a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Sammy Gravano went from being a feared killer to fighting with some dude on his bunk bed.
I'll tell you what, when I met him, he was probably close to his 60s.
Yeah.
And he was in great shape, tremendous shape. He would do like 300, 400 push-ups at that age.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a small guy, but, built and cut, real good shape.
So that's why he's 78 looking, he's getting around damn good, it looks like.
Yeah. He looks good for his age. He's good for him. God bless.
Yeah.
Well, Frank, thanks you a lot, my man. And
yep. Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, James, that was very interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I've been able to talk to Frank the last few days, and he's really a cool guy to talk to.
Okay, so James, why did we decide that we wanted to talk to him?
Well, I mean, several reasons, but mainly, I mean, it's good content. I mean, he's an expert on the Bonanno family. He's an expert on a lot of things that's dealing with the mafia, especially before 2002. And so we want to provide great content for folks, in my opinion.
Well, exactly. And this is just a decision that we came to as a show, that we want to, like guys like Frank, you just heard him put out a bunch of information, and we're going to go by a journalistic way. We're going to put out his information. I'll give you an example. He just told the story of Sammy Gravano when he's in I guess it was at that time protective custody. Yeah. And but Wissack, I'm guessing Wissack. Yeah. But he told the story. A lot of people can't tell those stories.
Right. Yeah, I find it fascinating because those are stories that we wouldn't hear unless we had Frank on. And so, and that's where I'm looking at it, is from a standpoint of history. He accepts what he did with, he knows that he was an informant, all that. We're not sugarcoating that or anything, and he's not making excuses for it. So for us, though, we're wanting to bring good content. Like you said, he's telling stories that we wouldn't be able to get unless we had Frank on. So we're just trying to get the best content we can for you.
Okay, well, I'm going to call that a day, and thank you. And people, please sub and like this channel if you have not. And underneath this video, when we're done, there'll also be, if you want to donate to the show, there'll be a link that you can hit there. Thank you so much, my man. I appreciate it. Everybody, take care, and I hope you enjoy this.